The first time I caught Karen Mitchell staring at my mail, I thought maybe, just maybe, she was just being her usual, nosy self. Karen had made a career out of sticking her nose where it didn't belong. She was the self-appointed watchdog of Maplewood Grove, the kind of neighbor who kept a clipboard at HOA meetings and a pair of binoculars by her kitchen window. She had opinions about everything. What color your door should be, how many guests you had over, whether your car was parked 1 inch too far from the curb. So when I first saw her lingering by my porch, staring a little too long at the packages on my doorstep, I told myself it was just Karen being Karen. I should have known better. Because 2 days later, my packages started disappearing. It wasn't immediate. At first, it was small things. A box of medical supplies I had ordered never arrived. A shipment of prescription refills from my mail-order pharmacy went missing. But the real red flag? My delivery notification said the packages had been delivered. I checked with the Postal Service. They confirmed it. Yet, nothing was on my porch. And when I checked my security camera footage, I saw her, Karen, standing on my porch in broad daylight rifling through my mail. And then, she picked up one of my packages and walked away with it. I felt my blood boil. Because if Karen thought this was some petty HOA dispute, she had no idea what she had just done. She had committed a federal crime. And I was about to make sure she paid for it. That evening, I marched over to Karen's house, my heart pounding with fury. She opened the door with her usual practiced, smug smile, like she had just been waiting for me to show up. "Ah, Lena, what a surprise," she said, crossing her arms. "Something wrong?" I didn't waste time. "You stole my mail," I said flatly. Her expression didn't even change. She just sighed and shook her head. Now, I wouldn't call it stealing." I stared at her. "You took a package off my porch." Karen sniffed. "I was inspecting it." I blinked. "You were what?" Karen squared her shoulders. "We have rules in this neighborhood, Lena. And I noticed you've been receiving suspicious-looking deliveries lately. I have a right to ensure that nothing illegal is going on." I actually laughed out loud. "Karen," I said, shaking my head, "you trespassed onto my property, stole my mail, and now you're admitting it to my face?" Karen's eye twitched at the word stole, but she didn't back down. "It's not stealing," she said, her voice tight. "It's community oversight." I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and turned it around so she could see the security footage. There she was, clear as day, stepping onto my porch, digging through my packages, walking away with one of them. Karen's smug expression cracked, but she recovered fast. "That doesn't prove anything," she said, lifting her chin. "For all anyone knows, I was just moving it to a safer spot." I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "Karen," I said, "you do realize that tampering with mail is a federal offense, right?" Her face went pale. I watched satisfied as she processed those words. Finally, I saw fear creep into her expression. But before she could say anything else, I turned and walked away. Because I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. First, to the postmaster. I explained what happened. Told them I had footage of a neighbor stealing my mail. The postmaster's tone shifted immediately. "That's a serious offense," he said. "We'll be sending someone out to investigate." Good. Second, to the police. I filed a formal complaint. Mail theft wasn't just a neighborhood dispute. It was a crime. And Karen? Karen was about to find out exactly how serious it was. 2 days later, a postal inspector and a police officer knocked on Karen's door. I watched from my porch, arms crossed, as she answered, smiling at first. And then? I saw it. The exact moment she realized she was in real trouble. The postal inspector handed her a document. I didn't hear the whole conversation, but I caught fragments. Federal mail tampering laws. Serious consequences if this continues. Potential charges, depending on cooperation. Karen's face turned ghost white. Her lips parted. She stammered something, but the officer just shook his head. Finally, after several minutes, she nodded stiffly and slammed the door shut. I couldn't help but smirk. Because for the first time ever, Karen had lost. and there was nothing she could do about it. The Postal Service had decided not to press federal charges this time. Instead, Karen was slapped with a formal warning, a mandatory privacy violation hearing, and a stern reminder that if she ever touched someone's mail again, she could face serious consequences. At the next HOA meeting, the board grilled her. Even her usual allies were hesitant to defend her. Karen, one of the board members, sighed, rubbing his temples. "We can't keep defending this kind of behavior." Karen sat rigid and furious, her lips pursed so tightly they practically disappeared. But she didn't argue. She knew. This time, she had gone too far. After that, Karen kept her distance. No more petty complaints. No more stolen packages. No more snooping in my business. And my mail? Safe. Untouched. For the first time in years, I could finally go about my day without looking over my shoulder. And as I sat on my porch, watching the mail truck pull up, my packages arriving exactly where they belonged, I smiled. Because this time, Karen had learned her lesson. And she wasn't going to forget it. For 2 weeks after the mail theft scandal, Karen was eerily silent. No passive-aggressive glares. No petty complaints. No surprise HOA violations. For a moment, I thought, maybe, she had finally learned her lesson. But then, the notices started arriving. One after another. Notice: unauthorized front porch clutter. Violation: failure to maintain proper aesthetic standards. Notice: excessive package deliveries. Violation: potential commercial activity in a residential zone. Notice: unapproved security camera placement. Violation: infringement on neighbor privacy. I stared at the stack of papers in disbelief. Karen had found another way to attack me. And this time, she was doing it legally. At the next HOA meeting, I walked in ready for war. Karen sat at the board table, smug as ever, her hands folded neatly in her lap. I slammed the violation notices onto the table. "This is harassment," I said flatly. Karen feigned innocence. "We're just upholding community standards, Lena." I turned to the board. "Since when is receiving mail a violation?" One of the newer board members, Tina Parker, frowned. "Wait, excessive package deliveries? That's not a real rule." Karen smiled tightly. "It falls under the category of excessive activity that disrupts the harmony of the neighborhood." I narrowed my eyes. "You made that up." She shrugged. "Rules evolve." I could feel my pulse pounding. This wasn't about mail. Karen was retaliating. She couldn't get away with stealing my packages, so now she was weaponizing the HOA against me. I took a deep breath. If she wanted a legal battle, I was ready to bury her in paperwork. That night, I made a few important calls. First, to my lawyer. "Can the HOA actually fine me over receiving mail?" I asked. My lawyer laughed. "No, that's absurd." "Good," I said, "because I'm about to challenge every single one of these violations." Second, to the HOA board members who weren't in Karen's pocket. I started with Tina Parker, the only person who seemed reasonable at the meeting. "Tina, can I ask you something?" She sighed. "Let me guess, Karen's gone off the rails again? She's trying to fine me for getting packages delivered." Tina cursed under her breath. I knew she was scheming something, but this is ridiculous. I smirked. "So you're on my side?" "Absolutely." Third, to the county zoning office. If Karen was twisting HOA rules, I wanted to know if there were any laws protecting me from her nonsense. Turns out, there were. And I was about to use them against her. The HOA scheduled a formal hearing to discuss my violations. Karen walked in like she had already won. She took her seat at the board table, folded her hands neatly, and gave me that smug, self-satisfied smile. But I was 3 steps ahead of her. The moment the hearing began, I slammed a folder onto the table. Inside? Legal documents. Emails. HOA bylaws. Zoning regulations. And proof that Karen had manufactured the violations herself. Tina Parker cleared her throat. "Karen, why did you approve these violations?" Karen didn't even blink. "They were necessary to uphold our neighborhood standards." Tina nodded. "Right. Except, according to HOA records, these rules don't actually exist." Karen's smile stiffened. I pressed forward. And even if they did? Federal law protects my right to receive mail without interference, which means the HOA can't regulate my package deliveries. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Karen's face darkened. We can amend the rules. Tina shook her head. Not like this. This is clear harassment, Karen. Another board member muttered, yeah, this is a bad look for us. Karen's jaw tightened. She was losing. And she knew it. For the first time in years, the HOA voted against Karen. Every single violation she had issued? Overturned. She had lost. Completely. And then? She did something I'll never forget. Karen, usually so controlled, so smug, stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. She slammed her hands onto the table, her face twisted in rage. You people are ruining this neighborhood, she shrieked. The room went dead silent. Even the board members who had once sided with her stared in shock. Karen turned to me, eyes blazing. This is your fault, Lena. You and your stupid packages and you're stupid. She caught herself. Took a deep breath. Then, without another word, she stormed out of the meeting. 2 weeks later, Karen put her house up for sale. No announcement. No dramatic goodbye. Just a quiet exit. By the end of the month, she was gone. And for the first time since moving to Maplewood Grove, I felt truly free. No more petty violations. No more stolen mail. No more Karen. As I sat on my porch, watching the mail truck pull up, packages arriving exactly where they belonged, I smiled. Because this time, Karen wasn't coming back. Ever. With Karen Mitchell finally gone, Maplewood Grove felt like a new neighborhood. For the first time in years, I could check my mail without paranoia. No more mysterious HOA violations. No more stolen packages. No more petty, power-hungry battles. Or so I thought. Because 3 weeks after Karen left, a moving truck pulled up to her old house. I stepped onto my porch, sipping my coffee, watching as the new homeowners arrived. And the moment I saw him, I felt a sinking feeling in my gut. A tall man, dressed in an expensive suit, sunglasses covering his eyes, barking orders at the movers like he was running a Fortune 500 company instead of unpacking boxes. His wife, a sharp-looking woman in designer heels, stood beside him, checking things off on her tablet. And their teenage son? Already scowling at the neighborhood like he was too good for it. I had a bad feeling. And when I saw the name on their mailbox, I knew my instincts were right. Whitaker. As in George Whitaker. As in the former corrupt HOA president I helped take down. His brother had just moved in. And something told me he wasn't here to make friends. It didn't take long for Charles Whitaker to introduce himself to the neighborhood. And by introduce himself, I mean he called for an emergency HOA meeting within 2 days of moving in. Mark Reynolds, my longtime ally in HOA politics, called me the morning of the meeting. You're not gonna like this, he said. Why do I feel like you're about to ruin my day? I muttered. Mark sighed. Charles Whitaker wants to run for HOA president. I almost choked on my coffee. Excuse me? Yeah, Mark continued. And he's already got half the old board members backing him. I rubbed my temples. Of course. Of course this was happening. Karen was gone. Roger was gone. George was gone. And now? Charles Whitaker was here to finish what they started. The night of the HOA meeting, the clubhouse was packed. Half the room was filled with old-timers, the kind of people who had loved Karen's authoritarian style. The other half? People like me, sick of the HOA's nonsense. Charles stood at the front of the room, flashing a fake politician's smile as he addressed the crowd. I want to bring order back to Maplewood Grove, he announced. For too long, our community has been lacking structure. I clenched my jaw. This was the same speech Karen gave when she ran the HOA. And then, Charles dropped his first bombshell. As of today, he continued, I'm proposing stricter package delivery regulations. I froze. Here we go. Charles turned, his gaze landing directly on me. We've all seen the excessive delivery traffic in our neighborhood, he said smoothly. And some homes, especially those receiving large volumes of packages, could be engaging in commercial activity. I felt every eye in the room turn toward me. I inhaled slowly, exhaled even slower. This wasn't about package deliveries. This was about me. Charles was picking up where Karen left off. And I wasn't about to let him win. The next morning, I woke up to another letter from the HOA. This one wasn't a violation notice. It was worse. Notice of formal investigation. Dear Ms. Carter, due to community concerns regarding potential business operations within a residential zone, we are launching a formal investigation into your property's use. HOA inspectors will be conducting site reviews within the next 2 weeks. Failure to comply may result in fines or further legal action. Sincerely, Charles Whitaker, Interim HOA President. I clenched my fists. He was trying to force me out. He couldn't ban my packages outright, so instead, he was trying to paint me as a rule breaker. I took a deep breath. Then I pulled out my phone. Because if Charles thought he could weaponize the HOA against me, he had no idea who he was messing with. I made my first call to my lawyer. This is harassment, I told him. Can they actually do this? Not legally, he said. But they can make your life hell if you don't fight back. My second call? To the county zoning office. If the HOA is accusing me of running a business, can they actually enforce anything? I asked. The zoning official laughed. Not unless you've got a storefront in your garage. Good. My third call? To the local news. Hey, Megan, I said. You up for another HOA corruption story? She laughed. You know I am. By the time the next HOA meeting rolled around, I was ready. Charles strode into the clubhouse, his fake smile firmly in place. But as soon as the meeting started, I stood up, and I called him out. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, holding up a thick stack of documents. This investigation Charles is pushing? It's illegal. Gasps rippled through the room. I slammed the paperwork onto the table. I spoke to the county zoning board. I spoke to my lawyer. And I spoke to the press. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. If Charles wants to accuse me of violating HOA rules, he'd better have proof. I turned to face him, arms crossed. So tell me, Charles, what proof do you have? Silence. Dead, awkward silence. Then, Charles gritted his teeth. This isn't over, he muttered. I smirked. Yes, Charles. It is. Within a week, Charles's fake investigation was shut down. Within a month, he was removed from the HOA board. And within 2 months, the Whitakers put their house up for sale. By the time they left, no one even said goodbye. And me? For the first time since moving to Maplewood Grove, I could finally check my mail without looking over my shoulder. Because now, no one would dare touch it again. For a while, things were good. The HOA had new leadership. The petty violations had stopped. And the Whitakers? Long gone. I finally had peace. Until the new HOA president arrived. And everything went to hell. I first met Olivia Dawson at an HOA meeting. She stood at the podium, perfectly poised, red blonde hair in a tight bun, wearing a crisp white blazer like she was running for Congress instead of running an HOA. And her smile? It wasn't Karen's condescending smirk or Charles's fake politician grin. It was cold, calculated, dangerous. Good evening, everyone, Olivia said smoothly. I know Maplewood Grove has gone through some turbulence recently, but I'm here to restore order. I immediately didn't trust her. And when I saw the way she glanced at me, I knew. She already had a plan. A week after Olivia took over, new HOA guidelines were posted online. And one rule stood out. Homeowners receiving excessive package deliveries may be subject to additional HOA review to prevent non-residential activity. I rolled my eyes. Here we go again. The first time it happened, I thought I was imagining it. A man in an HOA badge walking past my house, lingering by my mailbox a little too long. The second time? A clipboard lady taking notes from across the street. And then, the letter arrived. Notice, unauthorized deliveries. Your package activity has exceeded normal residential levels. Per HOA policy, you're required to submit documentation proving compliance. I laughed out loud. Oh, Olivia, You have no idea what you just started. I called my lawyer. Again. I called the postmaster. Again. And I prepared my next move. At the next HOA meeting, I walked in with a folder of documents. And I made sure the local press was watching. HOA package monitoring? I said loudly. That's illegal. It violates federal privacy laws. Murmurs spread through the room. Olivia's fake smile didn't waver. Lena, she said smoothly, we're simply ensuring compliance with community regulations. I slapped my legal documents onto the table. You're ensuring a lawsuit is what you're doing. And that's when Olivia's smile finally cracked. Within a month, Olivia's surveillance policy was shut down. Within 2 months, she resigned. And within 3 months, the HOA board was completely dismantled. No more fake violations. No more inspections. No more HOA tyranny. For the first time since moving to Maplewood Grove, the HOA had lost. For good. 1 year later, I sat on my porch, watching the mail truck pull up. No one was watching. No one was interfering. No one was snooping where they didn't belong. Because now, I was finally, truly free. And this time, no one was coming for me again. For 6 months, things were peaceful. No more HOA spies. No more harassment over packages. No more corrupt leadership trying to control the neighborhood. I thought the war was finally over. Then, one morning, I found a certified letter in my mailbox. From the Department of Homeland Security. My hands went cold. What the hell was this? The letter was short. Cold. To the point. Notice of investigation. Ms. Carter. Due to recent reports concerning unusual package activity at your residence, your property has been flagged for review under the Anti-Smuggling and Contraband Prevention Act. Federal agents will be conducting an assessment of deliveries associated with your address. Failure to comply may result in further legal action. I stared at the letter, then read it again. And then I realized. Someone had reported me to the federal government. And I had a very good idea who. There was only one person left in Maplewood Grove who still held a grudge. Janet Holloway, the former HOA secretary, the one who had covered for Karen, for Roger, for Cynthia. She had lost everything when the HOA collapsed. And now, she was trying to get revenge by turning me into a federal suspect. I took a deep breath, gripping the letter. Oh, Janet, you have no idea what you've just done. 2 days later, they showed up. A black SUV rolled down the street. 2 men in suits stepped out. FBI? Homeland Security? Postal inspectors? I didn't know. But one thing was clear, this wasn't the HOA. This was serious. One of them, a tall man with a buzz cut and a badge clipped to his belt, knocked on my door. Ms. Carter. I folded my arms. That's me. He glanced at a file in his hands. We need to talk about your mail. The agent sat in my living room, flipping through printouts of my deliveries. Buzz-cut agent raised an eyebrow. You get a lot of packages. I shrugged. I have chronic health issues. I get my prescriptions mailed in bulk. Is that illegal now? The second agent, a woman with sharp eyes and a calm expression, leaned forward. We received a tip about potential illicit substances being delivered here, she said. I laughed. Let me guess, I said. The tip came from a woman named Janet Holloway. The agents exchanged glances. And that's when I knew I was right. Janet had reported me to the feds, and now she was about to regret it. I let the agents finish their questions. Then I pulled out a folder of my own. Security camera footage. Mail records. Legal documents. Everything proving Janet Holloway had a long history of weaponizing authority to harass people. I slid the folder across the table. You've been investigating me, I said, but maybe you should be investigating who sent the complaint. The agents flipped through the papers. Sharp-eyed agent's expression darkened. This is concerning, she admitted. Buzz-cut agent sighed. We may need to look into this. I leaned back, smirking. Yeah, I said. You do that. 1 week later, Janet Holloway's house was raided. Not by SWAT teams, this wasn't an action movie. But by federal agents, armed with warrants and very serious questions about her false reports and misuse of government resources. By the end of the month, she was under formal investigation for filing fraudulent claims, tampering with postal records, harassing federal agencies. And when the news broke, the neighborhood turned on her instantly. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who had tried to get her neighbor arrested over mail. Within 2 months, Janet Holloway was gone. Her house sold. Her reputation destroyed. And for the first time ever, Maplewood Grove was finally free. 1 year later, I sat on my porch, watching the mail truck pull up. No one was watching. No one was interfering. No one was snooping where they didn't belong. Because now, I was untouchable. No HOA. No Karen. No Roger. No George. No Cynthia. No Janet. They had all lost. And I had won. For good. For a year, Maplewood Grove was finally peaceful. No HOA. No harassment. No petty disputes. Just a normal neighborhood, the way it should have been all along. And then, one morning, I found a strange letter in my mailbox. Not from the HOA. Not from Karen's old allies. Not even from the government. It was from a real estate investment company. I opened it, and what I read made my stomach drop. Notice of acquisition, Maplewood Grove. Dear homeowner, we are pleased to inform you that Maplewood Grove has been purchased by Hearthstone Properties, LLC. As part of this transition, we will be implementing new community policies to maintain property values and enhance neighborhood standards. Please review the enclosed documents, which outline updated property use regulations, new mandatory fees for community maintenance, compliance expectations for all homeowners. Failure to comply may result in financial penalties or property reassessment. Sincerely, Hearthstone Properties Management. I stared at the letter, my pulse pounding. The HOA wasn't just coming back. It had been bought. And now, a faceless corporation owned my neighborhood. Within a week, the signs went up. Maplewood Grove, a Hearthstone community. Within 2 weeks, every homeowner received a welcome packet, a 70-page contract full of new rules, new fees, and new restrictions. And buried deep in the fine print? All homeowners are subject to compliance inspections, including mail review for security purposes. I felt the rage bubble up. Mail review? They weren't even pretending to be subtle. This was worse than Karen. Worse than Charles. Worse than Janet weaponizing the government. This wasn't about power-hungry neighbors anymore. This was about a billion-dollar corporation trying to control my home. And if they thought I was going to roll over and comply, they had no idea who they were messing with. It didn't take long before the first violation notice arrived. A hefty $500 fine for excessive package activity. I laughed. Out loud. Because Hearthstone Properties? They had just made the worst mistake of their corporate lives. I wasn't dealing with some power-tripping HOA president anymore. This was corporate greed. So I called in the only people who could fight back. First, the media. Megan Thompson, the journalist who had covered Karen's downfall, George's corruption, and Janet's federal investigation, was thrilled. "You're telling me a corporation is trying to ban package deliveries," she said. "Oh yeah," I said. "And they're fining homeowners for it." "You know what?" Megan said. "I think this is a national story." Second, consumer protection lawyers. Hearthstone Properties was big. But even big corporations have to follow the law. And their mail review policy? Massively illegal. The lawyers loved it. "This could be the biggest class action lawsuit of the decade," one of them said. "Good," I said. "Because I want to bury them." Third, federal agencies. The same postal inspectors who had investigated Janet? Now, they were investigating Hearthstone. Because tampering with residential mail, even through a corporate HOA, was still a federal crime. And within a month, Hearthstone was being hit from every angle. The lawsuits piled up. The press went wild. Homeowners revolted. And then, Hearthstone pulled out. Just like that. They sold off their stake in Maplewood Grove. Every contract? Nullified. Every fine? Wiped clean. Every attempt at control? Completely destroyed. And when the news broke, it wasn't just a local story. It was national. Corporate HOA scandal ends in massive legal defeat. Maplewood Grove residents win landmark case against real estate giant. Homeowner fights back and takes down a multi-million-dollar corporation. And just like that, Maplewood Grove was free. For good. 1 year later, I sat on my porch, sipping coffee. For the first time since moving here, I wasn't waiting for the next battle. Because there wasn't one left to fight. No more Karen. No more Roger. No more George. No more Charles. No more Janet. No more corporate greed trying to take my home. I had one. And Maplewood Grove? It was finally, truly ours again. I smiled, watching as the mail truck pulled up, completely undisturbed. Because now, no one would ever dare touch my mail again. It had been 2 years since I took down Hearthstone Properties. For the first time in forever, Maplewood Grove was peaceful. No HOA. No corporate overlords. No one watching my mail. And then, a letter arrived from City Hall. I opened it, and I felt my stomach drop. Notice of imminent domain claim, Maplewood Grove. Dear homeowner. In accordance with urban redevelopment plans, the City of Fairview is reclaiming select residential areas for public infrastructure projects. Your property has been identified for mandatory reassessment and potential acquisition. Please review the enclosed compensation offer. Failure to comply may result in forced property seizure under eminent domain laws. Sincerely, Fairview Municipal Planning Department. I stared at the letter, my hands shaking. The city was trying to take my home. Not an HOA. Not a corporation. The damn government. And if they thought I was going to let that happen, they had no idea who they were messing with. I didn't waste time. I took the letter straight to the media. Megan Thompson, the reporter who had exposed the HOA, the corporate fraud, and everything in between, was furious. They're trying to take your house after everything, she asked. Oh yeah, I said. And I'm going to make them regret it. The news exploded. City government attempts to seize home of woman who fought HOA corruption. Local hero under attack by eminent domain abuse. Citizen versus City Hall, the final battle. The public outcry was immediate. People were furious. City Hall refused to comment. And within a week, they were backpedaling. Behind the scenes, the mayor was panicking. The city hadn't expected a massive PR disaster. And it got worse. Because I wasn't just fighting back in the news. I had lawyers, activists, and federal investigators digging into their entire operation. And what they found? Corruption. Lots of it. Bribes. Shady land deals. Illegal zoning changes. And suddenly, the city's little redevelopment plan was looking a lot like a criminal conspiracy. Within a month, the mayor was under ethics investigation. Within 2 months, 3 city officials were forced to resign. And within 6 months, the entire eminent domain project was shut down. Maplewood Grove was saved. For good. 1 year later, I sat on my porch, watching the sunset. For the first time in forever, I wasn't waiting for the next battle. Because there wasn't one left to fight. No HOA. No corporations. No government trying to steal my home. I had one. Completely. Utterly. And as I watched the mail truck pull up, completely undisturbed, untouched, unchallenged, I smiled. Because now, it had been a year since I took down City Hall. Maplewood Grove was finally safe. No HOA. No corporate overlords. No government threats. Then, a black SUV pulled up outside my house. 2 men in expensive suits stepped out. And when one of them knocked on my door, I already knew. This wasn't the government. This was something worse. The man at my door was tall, broad-shouldered, and calm in a way that made my skin crawl. He smiled, too friendly. "Miss Carter?" he asked. I folded my arms. "Who's asking?" He pulled a business card from his pocket. Vincent Moretti, property development consultant. I stared at it. "Funny," I said. "I don't remember putting my house up for sale." Vincent chuckled. "Not yet," he said. "But let's talk about why you should." Vincent stepped inside, taking a slow look around my living room. Then he sat down like he owned the place. "We've been watching Maplewood Grove," he said. "And let's just say, it's prime real estate." I clenched my jaw. "Not for sale." Vincent smiled wider. Oh, come on, he said. Everyone has a price. And I'd hate to see something unfortunate happen to such a lovely home. I stared at him. There it was. The threat, wrapped up in politeness and a business suit. I exhaled slowly. Then I smirked. Vincent? I said. He leaned forward. Yeah? I pulled out my phone and hit record. You just threatened me, I said. So let's talk about why you shouldn't have. After Vincent left, I made some calls. And what I found was bad. The Moretti family wasn't just some real estate firm. They were deep in organized crime, land grabs, money laundering, extortion. And now, they were trying to force homeowners out of Maplewood Grove. Because if they couldn't buy the land legally, they'd take it another way. A week later, I woke up to find my car tire slashed, my security cameras ripped out, a bullet casing on my front porch. Message received. But if they thought I was going to scare easy, they had no idea who they were messing with. I took my security footage and Vincent's recorded threat straight to the FBI. Because if the Morettis thought they could bully me out of my home, they were about to regret it. The agents listened carefully. And then one of them, a woman named Agent Ramirez, leaned forward. You know, she said, we've been trying to build a case against the Morettis for a while now. I smiled. Good, I said. Because I want to help you bury them. Agent Ramirez had a plan. She wanted evidence, real, undeniable proof that the Morettis were using intimidation tactics to steal homes. So we set a trap. I called Vincent and told him I was reconsidering his offer. He took the bait. And when he came back, the FBI was waiting. Vincent Moretti was arrested on the spot. His phone records led the feds straight to his brothers, cousins, and business partners. And within a month, the entire Moretti land scheme collapsed. Dozens of arrests, millions in property seizures. And the Morettis? Completely wiped out. 6 months later, I sat on my porch, watching the mail truck pull up. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the next threat. Because there wasn't one left. No HOA. No corporate overlords. No government threats. No mobsters trying to steal my land. Maplewood Grove was finally, truly free. And me? I had one. Completely. Utterly. Forever. I smiled, sipping my coffee. Because now, no one would ever dare mess with me again. It had been a year since I took down the Morettis. Maplewood Grove was at peace. No HOA. No corporations. No mobsters. Just a normal neighborhood, the way it should have been. Then, a package arrived at my doorstep. No return address. No tracking number. Just a plain cardboard box. Something in my gut twisted. I picked it up slowly, carried it inside, and set it on my kitchen table. And when I opened it, I felt my blood run cold. Inside was a single item. A clipboard. And attached to it? A printed note. Did you really think we were gone? That night, I started digging. And what I found chilled me to the core. A new HOA was forming. Not Karen's old crew. Not Hearthstone Properties. Something new. Bigger. Smarter. And at the top of it all? A name I hadn't heard in years. Cynthia Holloway. She was back. And this time, she wasn't just trying to take over Maplewood Grove. She was building a homeowner's empire. Within 2 weeks, my neighborhood was under siege. Not by criminals. Not by the government. By paperwork. New property assessment notices. Sudden changes to zoning laws. Mysterious community fines appearing in people's mailboxes. Cynthia had found a legal loophole. And she was weaponizing it. If she couldn't force me out with an HOA, she'd drown me in red tape. I tracked her down to a luxury office in downtown Fairview. A corporate-style HOA headquarters with a boardroom full of people in suits, not homeowners, but investors. When I barged in, Cynthia was waiting for me. She smirked. "Lena," she said smoothly. "I was wondering when you'd show up." I threw the clipboard onto the table. "You're trying to bring back the HOA." Cynthia leaned back. "Oh no, this isn't an HOA." She gestured to the documents on the table. "This is a homeowner's investment trust. A network of privately controlled communities." I clenched my jaw. So you're buying up entire neighborhoods? She smiled. Not buying, Lena. Owning. For years, I had fought against HOAs, corporations, and government overreach. But now? Now, the fight wasn't about one neighborhood. Cynthia was trying to create a monopoly on private housing. HOAs that functioned like corporate dictatorships. Investors controlling entire communities. Homeowners stripped of all rights, forced to comply or be forced out. This wasn't just Maplewood Grove anymore. This was a war for every neighborhood in the country. I left Cynthia's office, heart pounding. I had won every battle so far. But this was a war. A war against a system designed to strip people of their homes, their rights, their freedom. And if Cynthia thought I was going to let her win, she had no idea who she was messing with. I pulled out my phone and made the most important call of my life. Hey, Megan, I said. You ready to go national with this? The reporter on the other end laughed. Oh, she said. Hell yes. And just like that, the final battle had begun. The moment I walked out of Cynthia's office, I made 3 calls. First, to Megan Thompson, the journalist who had covered every single HOA scandal in Maplewood Grove. You're not going to believe this, I told her. Megan's voice sharpened. Try me. I laid it all out, Cynthia's new empire, the investor-backed HOAs, the legal loopholes, the financial traps. Megan went dead silent. Then she said, I'm booking a flight to DC. We're blowing this up at the federal level. Good. Because Cynthia wasn't just a local problem anymore. She was a national threat. Second, to a homeowner's rights attorney. I needed firepower. Legal firepower. So I called one of the top property rights lawyers in the country. We've been waiting for a case like this, he said. You got one now, I told him. Third, to a former FBI agent. Because if Cynthia was really building a national housing monopoly, I needed to know. Was this just corruption? Or was it something even darker? His answer? Way worse than I thought. The former FBI agent, Ben Kessler, met me at a coffee shop downtown. He was retired, but still had contacts in government investigations. You're in deeper than you think, he said. I sipped my coffee. Go on. Ben leaned forward. Cynthia isn't just working with private investors. She's got connections to international real estate firms. Think foreign entities buying up entire towns. My stomach dropped. They're not just trying to control Maplewood Grove, I realized. They're trying to own entire suburbs. Ben nodded. And once they do, they jack up HOA fees, fine people into foreclosure, then flip the properties for massive profit. I exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was bigger than anything I had ever fought before. And if Cynthia thought she was going to get away with it, she was about to regret everything. 1 week later, the first lawsuit was filed. A massive homeowners class action case against Cynthia's organization, led by top lawyers, backed by state officials. And the best part? It was only the beginning. Because Megan's news investigation was about to air. And it was going to expose everything. When Megan's story went live, it was everywhere. Homeowners versus HOAs, the battle for property rights. The dark side of HOA investments, how homeowners are being forced out. Meet the woman taking on the most powerful HOA CEO in the country. And then, the government stepped in. The Federal Trade Commission launched an investigation. The Department of Housing and Urban Development issued a formal review. Even Congress started asking questions. Cynthia's empire? Cracking. Fast. One night, I was sitting on my porch, drinking coffee, when a black car pulled up across the street. The back door opened, and Cynthia Holloway stepped out. Alone. She walked up my driveway, her heels clicking against the pavement. Then she stopped, crossed her arms, and smirked. You've caused quite a mess, Lena. I sipped my coffee. So have you. She tilted her head. You don't get it, do you? I set my mug down. Oh, I get it. You tried to buy the country, and now you're watching it fall apart in real time. Cynthia's smile tightened. You don't understand who you're dealing with. I leaned forward. Neither do you. She held my gaze for a long moment, then turned and walked away. And as she got into her car, I knew. This was the beginning of the end. In the next 6 months, everything unraveled. The lawsuit grew bigger. The government investigations got deeper. The public turned against her. And then? The arrests started. Dozens of Cynthia's investors were caught in fraud schemes. Federal seizures of illegally obtained property shut down half her HOA networks. And Cynthia? Cornered. With nowhere left to run. Cynthia called a press conference. Her last desperate attempt to spin the story. I showed up. Front row. She stepped up to the podium, her composure barely holding together. This has been a misunderstanding, she started. These allegations. I stood. Cut the crap, Cynthia. Gasps spread through the crowd. Cynthia's eyes flashed. You don't belong here. I smirked. Neither do you. Then I held up a legal document. Because as of today, I said, your entire company has been dismantled. The press exploded. Cynthia's face drained of color. It was over. For real. For good. 1 year later, Maplewood Grove was free. No HOA. No corporate control. No one spying on my mail. Cynthia Holloway? Gone. Her empire? Destroyed. And me? I had one. Completely. Utterly. Forever. I sat on my porch, watching the mail truck pull up. And for the first time in my life, I knew no one was ever coming for me again. I smiled. Because now, I wasn't just a homeowner. I was the woman who took down the most powerful HOA in history. And I would never, ever lose again. For years, I had fought HOAs, corporations, corrupt officials, and even the mob. They had tried to find me, evict me, surveil me, and even intimidate me. And every single time, I had won. Cynthia Holloway's empire collapsed. The government's land grab failed. The corporate takeovers backfired. The HOA was dead for good. Maplewood Grove belonged to the homeowners again. No more fines. No more violations. No more threats. Just a neighborhood, the way it was meant to be. 1 year after Cynthia's downfall, I sat on my porch, watching the mail truck pull up. For the first time in forever, I wasn't waiting for the next fight. Because there wasn't one left to fight. No one was watching. No one was interfering. No one was snooping where they didn't belong. I had fought them all and I had won. Completely. Utterly. Forever. I smiled, sipping my coffee. Because now, no one would ever dare mess with me again. And this time I knew.